For a while now, the game industry has been relying on remakes or remasters to gauge the interest in old franchises, looking to capitalize on nostalgia and, in some cases, create a sequel. Not just specific to gaming, a lot of creative industries now rely on the member berries formula, and it's easy to see why. Everyone has that franchise, where no matter what format it comes in, they'd love to see a new entry in the series. However, sometimes this comes in the form of a monkey's paw. Whether it be a complete overhaul to a franchise's genre being relegated to development hell, or the games being deemed not popular enough to revisit. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and without further delay, let's look at 10 video game series that desperately need a comeback. Released in October in the year 2000, there wasn't much to say about the original TimeSplitters game. The fun cast of characters in an FPS format that was essentially just capture the bag didn't make many waves when it was released, but this all changed with the sequel. TimeSplitters 2 in 2002 was an entirely different kettle of fish. In fact, you could practically play as a kettle of fish. With a much more fleshed out story mode, a huge cast of characters, challenge maps with custom unlocks, and a multiplayer suite that made GoldenEye on the N64 blush. This was further built upon by the third game 3 years later by expanding out the map creation kit and adding in even more game modes, including online play. Whilst critically and commercially it wasn't as widely lauded as the second game, the game still did well. Early rumours of a new entry in the game surfaced in 2007, then we got more and more teasers from developer Free Radical until 2009, where they were bought out by Crytek and relabeled Crytek UK, causing TimeSplitters 4 to be permanently put on hold. TimeSplitters 4 was rumoured to be a satirical parody of video games this time, rather than movies like with the previous games, with early images showing a Gears of War symbol with a monkey head on it. Then in 2011, we got some more news. TimeSplitters 4 was being actively worked on for the PS4 and Xbox One, but a year later a spokesperson in Crytek stated it wasn't being worked on at all. Fast forward to 2014, and Crytek UK closed down. From here it was radio silence up until 2021, where Free Radical Design was reformed from the old staff, and the future looked bright until Deep Silver was acquired by the Embracer Group. And for those in the know, some bad business deals caused the Embracer Group to shut down a boatload of studios, including Free Radical Design. Nearly 20 years from its original announcement, we're yet to see or hear anything concrete of TimeSplitters 4. With the franchise's fun, addicting gameplay and huge roster of characters, it fits pretty well in the modern gaming landscape, but may have a bit of an identity crisis, with games like Fortnite or Call of Duty basically following the path that Free Radical paved. I'd love to see a new entry, just to see what insanity they'd come out with next. A much less extensive story is that of Parasite Eve, a game which had so many good ideas it's a shame they never got off the ground. Parasite Eve is probably best described as a combination of Final Fantasy and Resident Evil, in that there are stats, items, action points in open combat, but the main body of exploration is Resident Evil style, with fixed camera angles and flavor texts for each item on a table. Something about its insane story with aliens fighting in the Statue of Liberty and creating the ultimate being just hooked certain gamers, and had them die-hard fans for this cult classic. Whilst this game wasn't too well received back in 1998, it was the then innovative gameplay of combining RPG mechanics with survival horror that we could do with a revival of, whether it be a remake of the original into something more modern, with gameplay similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake series, or a brand new entry. We need more exciting blends of gameplay styles in gaming. Created and released by Rare on the N64 in June 1998, Banjo Kazooie was seen as one of the true great platformers, up there with Mario or Crash Bandicoot. The witty, almost adult dialogue mixed with the impressive for the time visuals and fun gameplay including transformations, the game went from strength to strength, resulting in sequel Banjo Tooie being realised not long after. This sequel built on the gameplay on a lot of ways, adding new transformations, set pieces, and an almost FPS element to it. From here people weren't sure what the third entry could be, but the only way was up. This was of course until 2002 where Rare was bought out by Microsoft, resulting in some old titles that sounded familiar like Battletoads or Perfect Dark being released, but they seemed very far from what the original Rare had created. This culminated in a game direction for Banjo Kazooie that baffled literally everyone, and while some have said it's not that bad or even downright good, the one thing it isn't is a Banjo Kazooie game. Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts released in 2008, and was instead of a traditional platformer, a vehicle building game. Focusing on the creation of cars, planes and boats fit to traverse the world to acquire the jigsaw pieces from the previous games, this weird direction the game took has often been labelled as the reason why the franchise is currently dormant. I understand wanting to do something different rather than more of the same, but it's an odd decision to go from platforming to car building. Whilst Banjo has made appearances in kart races and fighting games throughout the years since 2008, he's yet to have his own game and time in the sun, and what people affectionately dub Banjo Tooie is still high on people's wish lists whenever Microsoft announces a game showcase. Some game series end due to the original team having moved on to new things, some due to loss of identity amongst a growing market, but the only game series I can think of that died due to wholly jumping the shark is Dino Crisis. Originally created as a parallel series to Resident Evil, which fixed camera angles and dinosaurs replacing zombies, the first Dino Crisis game was an all-out horror and was widely praised for this. Released in 1999, a good 6 years after Jurassic Park proved dinosaurs could be scary, this game was more or less a Resident Evil clone, but with more interesting enemies. Much like with the Resident Evil series though, when Capcom made the second entry of Dino Crisis, they made it significantly more action-focused than the previous one, with protagonist Regina no longer being on the back foot and taking the fight to the dinosaurs. This action focus then went into overdrive with the third installment, where for some strange reason they took it to space! Iconic protagonist Regina was replaced by Joe Soldier Man, and instead of actual dinosaurs they were all mutant dinosaurs created from the DNA of real ones. The action ramped up even more, and the game series was completely unrecognizable from its roots. We've literally seen nothing of the franchise since, save for Capcom's most recent foray into Dinosaurs Exoprimal, a live service dinosaur mech game which actually looked to have some interesting technology behind it. The main reason people got annoyed with this game when it first got announced though, was the fact that they threw a woman into the game who looks exactly like Regina, a very odd decision unless they were hinting at something. We're now 2 years on from that game, and there's still no word on the return of the Dino Crisis series, although many hope for a remake like with the Resident Evil series. Though it's worth noting, there are some indie games in development out there that are looking to fill the boots of the Dino Crisis series. Of course, on a list like this, you have to mention the meme of all game series that went shockingly dark, Half-Life. Valve has always created games that push the boundary of what modern technology at the time could do, and many believe this is the main reason we've never seen Half-Life 3. The original back in 1998 was almost universally given a 10 out of 10 rating for the innovations it brought to the FPS genre, offering scripted set pieces over cutscenes, alongside great weapon and enemy variety and a mind-bending story. This immersive world was then capitalized on even more with the even better received Half-Life 2, then following this, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2. These games pushed the genre even more by implementing realistic physics to the world using the Source engine, meaning all kinds of options were available to the player. The well-paced story ended on an infamous cliffhanger in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, however, where you were just about to set off to complete the saga and are attacked by evil combined robots. With a major character killed and the player character trapped, the game just ends, and with Episode 3 not having seen the light of day since Episode 2 in 2007, I'd say it's fairly safe to say we're not getting it. Valve did release Half-Life Alyx, an innovative and critically well-received VR game back in 2020, which actually essentially retcons the ending of Episode 2, but stops at the exact same point. Will we ever see this sequel? Probably not. Will everyone keep asking about it forever? Yes. Publishers do strange things. Stuff pay-to-win microtransactions into games, cancel highly anticipated games when they're almost finished, lay off hundreds of staff to pay executives, but the strangest of all is when they kill their own game releases. There's no better example of this than with the Titanfall series. Whilst the first game was solely concerned with multiplayer and was met with a very lukewarm reception, fans of the series were surprised to find that Titanfall 2 had surpassed the original in every way. Now with a significant and emotional story mode, more guns, more refined mechanics and an impressive multiplayer suite, Titanfall 2 had everything it needed to be the next Call of Duty or Battlefield. So the question is, why didn't it become the next heavy hitter FPS? Well, the answer is, for some reason, publisher Electronic Arts just didn't want to give Respawn's second attempt at Titanfall a reasonable chance. See, Titanfall 2 was released on the 20th of October 2016, whilst Battlefield 1, one of the best Battlefield games in my opinion, released a week earlier on October 21st, 2016. On top of this, on November 4th, a week after Titanfall 2 released, was the day Call of Duty Infinite Warfare came out. Due to this release schedule, Titanfall 2 had no chance of getting purchased in the FPS space, as if it had released in the summer prior, or even a few months prior, it may have caught some mainstream attention, but given it was sat with two juggernauts either side of it, including one from its very own publisher in Battlefield 1, it's safe to say not enough people picked it up. With my tinfoil hat firmly atop my head, I believe this was to support EA's pivot into live service gaming, as Titanfall lived on in the form of Apex Legends, a solely live service offering set in the Titanfall world. And whilst I really enjoyed Apex and spent a lot of time playing it, I do sit and wish, like many, for a Titanfall 3. There were rumours of a cancelled EA project as recent as this year in the Titanfall series, with a reported extraction shooter in the Titanfall universe being canned earlier this year amid some company layoffs. It seems Titanfall as a franchise just rubs Electronic Arts up the wrong way, and despite it paving the way for one of their most lucrative games, they just aren't willing to give it the love it deserves. Sometimes building a game around one core selling point is a good thing, especially in the indie space, where standing out can be difficult. However, in some cases when you tout realism in a very complicated system, you need to make sure you hit the mark. Enter Noire.
What exactly did you see them take?
They was working on the tires. That's all that was took.
I think sometimes people forget that this is actually a Rockstar developed game with some really unbelievable at the time facial capture technology. Noire was a sort of open world detective story, a bit like the Mafia series, but on the side of the law. The main selling point was the twisty and gritty noir story, alongside the motion capture technique used for capturing facial tics, which allowed you to properly interrogate suspects and figure out whether they were lying or telling the truth. The main reason this game became meme-worthy is the fact that some of the facial animations were either massively overplayed, or so subtle you couldn't see what they were doing, or they just looked alien. Couple this with the fact that interrogation options were originally good cop versus bad cop interactions that made the player character Cole Phelps feel like a man struggling with bipolar disorder, and the reception was very mixed. I genuinely love this game. With a keen interest in true crime and movies set in this time period, it felt great to me. But given people wanted a genuine open world, and this motion capture technology coupled with the actual acting being a bit lackluster, the game just didn't do well enough to warrant a revisit for another entry. I'd love to see a sequel now it's been 14 years since the first game, but I think Rockstar is too busy preoccupied building Grand Theft Auto and the live service elements within it to see any smaller projects through to completion. The perfect example of this was in 2024, where players subscribed to GTA Online service were given Noire access for free. But I guess this is as far as they're willing to go with this franchise for now. Like many of the cases in the game, it's gone cold. Another meme game sequel with an equally passionate fanbase is Beyond Good and Evil 2. In a very strange and I suspect very wounding turn of events for fans of the first game, this game has been announced and shown off multiple times over the years, unlike with Half-Life 3. The original Beyond Good and Evil, made by Ubisoft's Michel Ancel, creator of the Rayman series, was an action platformer released in 2003 starring Jade, a reporter and martial arts expert looking to expose the Dom-Z alien conspiracy. A fun blend of linear and open sections where you get to pilot a hovercraft type ship, Beyond Good and Evil had platforming, puzzles and combat that ended up very well received critically. It made sense that eventually Beyond Good and Evil 2 would show up at some point, as they announced it in 2008, despite Ubisoft leaning more and more towards live services as time went on. Fast forward to Ubisoft's E3 2017 conference, and they showed off an incredibly fun looking CGI trailer, which showcased what turned out to be a prequel set in the same world as the original game. Alongside this, over the following year or so were deep dives, developer blogs, and even gameplay showcases showing alpha versions of actually functioning gameplay. This is why the whole thing is so weird. The last we saw of any gameplay or any real updates for that matter was back in December of 2018, and since then for the past 6 going on 7 years, we've heard literally nothing. This game is most certainly in development hell, but what's worse is the fact that all of this actual footage suggested there was a real game here, and it's mad to think that it may never see the light of day. We need more action platformers in 2025. The final entry on this list is one close to my heart, as it lost the battle for supremacy in the stealth genre the minute Splinter Cell hit shelves. I'm talking of course about Syphon Filter, the 1999 action stealth game which starred Gabriel Logan as a super spy in a world of tactical espionage. Rather than taking itself too seriously or playing weird things straight like Metal Gear Solid or Splinter Cell, Syphon Filter had a ridiculous plot and some ridiculous weapons, like the air taser that let you set people on fire remotely. One of the notable gameplay aspects for it being a late 90s game was the enemy AI, with no set paths being taken, no predictability to it, making replays of the game more fun. Syphon Filter did get a laundry list of sequels and spin-offs in rapid succession, with Syphon Filter 2 and 3, followed by Omega Strain in 2004. Following this was some PSP titles, with the last known game in the franchise being a port of one of said PSP titles to the PS2 back in 2010. Not just Syphon Filter, but the stealth genre as a whole really needs an overhaul and revival in 2025, and I'd love not only the genre, but this series to come back with our pal Gabriel Logan holding the torch for the blueprints to what stealth gameplay looks like in the modern age. And that's my list of 10 game series that desperately need a comeback. What series would you like to see come back? Drop your answers in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more lists, reviews and deep dives in the future. If you want to chat to me directly, I'm over on x.com/gracious_rhino. I'm Gracious Rhino, look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.